Hey, what's happening, golfers? What's happening? Let's get our gear on. Let's wake up. Let's get up in this golf course. Alright, so this is just about using Tantra as a power source. And it's basically, it's a long guideline. This is just basically what we would be like without it. You know, maybe our bodies just are not adjusted to counting. And maybe it will never be able to count. Since it's so, robotic, when you get something right and wrong, and someone could get killed because someone's right, or killed because they're wrong, or exhausted or put in a bad position and they just look like they were right. And it's like a bunch of shit falling, and then there's no measurement to how it fell. It just looks like it fell in the right spot, didn't finish, didn't get everything right, didn't learn. Basically, is like having this happen here instead of go straight to this information here. Basically what it's about is like having a tube that you could blow air through, and it's basically like relearning health and how to adjust golf hats, which is my job. And anyway, taking these 11 different circles and just putting them all together, would be really useful. And basically, if we had a tube with all of these shapes in it, I think it would help us learn. And it's basically the throat here, back in there, and with see, I got my tonsils removed, so I don't have that. But they usually I think I have that thing, but I think it has an extra one or something. I don't know. I got the two things were taken out of my throat, though. And then I'd probably say like anything that's a circle that runs through your body, your veins, your kidneys, where your piss comes out of, shithole, and your eyes is a circle. It's a circuit. It's open and does take in air and does breathe it in. It's just like a tube sucking it. These eyes do suck in a little bit. Blinks constantly. It is exchanging and getting. It is. It's not just something that doesn't have a flow. Just imagine a long, clear tube with these different shapes in it that goes through all your things, and then that what is inserted could go into it and come out the other end, the same liquid, the same amount of force applied. And it would basically have to be like a pulse. So we have the throat, the lungs, inner lung flaps down up in here that kind of pushes the pedals. We have a diagram of pistons in a car. You could almost say like firing off a chamber, but really it's supposed to be about like, like you open up a hood in a car and it's got, it's pistons in there with the cylinder, and it pushes it one time for the cylinder. And, with one cylinder, it does generate energy, so it doesn't have to have 4 or 6. And we have peace sign, intestines, vessels, stomach, rectum, nerves, all of this, your mouth, your ears, how that operates, how it feels better when the air comes out instead of, it gets built up, your hair starts getting greasy, starts looking bad, it'll grow extra bushy shit, it'll get thicker, or less thicker, or it'll look less confident because there's constant streams coming out of your ears, going into your ears, out of your eyes, your nose, your hair follicles, your skin, your mouth, and your saliva glands is another root, your dick, your two balls, your ovaries, your eggs coming out, sperm coming out, filling it up. Everything has holes, fingernails, open and close. The word pip or fib, or Mr. Pibb, and shit like that. Usually I see it like fib. It's kind of how that works. Fib. Instead of remote. Or and then we have basically that Average thrust is 3 to 5 inches, or however much it would be, you know. But that is gained ground. It needs to be looked at. Instead of look at it as no progress, you know, it should be that there is movement gaining ground. Like if you're going like this in one thrust, um, you know, and when someone's hand is like that, or like, you know how there's certain hands that are the same in gesture, that's because there's a perfect position foothold there. And, you know, it has to have like, okay, you know, you give it the thrust and then say, I went up, but see, that's how much I went. So have a distance, you know, would need to be calculated. And I'll probably say another thing that's needed is, you know, a zero constant. You know, a zero constant that is completely at zero, and then a forced volume constant, which requires two people, and it has to be male and female in order for it to work. I believe that you could probably also use male and female if there's actually a physics to where the male or female did not use. And then, okay, that would be like a basically a physics of this. And then when you roll your hands like this, you know, it makes this black shit. And I believe that that would be sort of like the excess or something. Like if it was like nasty and greasy, I usually take all the nasty and greasy and like uncomfortable shit, put it over there in that pile, you know, where it's like nasty. And then I put the good stuff, like, you know, the keef of your hands over here in the good pile. This is like the good shit over here. This is like the mantra energy, or the Tantra energy, or whatever the fuck it's called, Tantra energy. And then over here, you know, we have, you know, the disposal, you know, where you would be at flat, you know, the whole time. And, or like full flex forced, and then it would have half of it, you can't get it. You know, it'd be like not getting, you know, okay, it'd be like if you could just constantly choose, you know, something tastes good and something tastes bad. And then you're like, well, you know, what tastes good is actually nourishing me, and what tastes bad, you know, is not. You know, so I'll just take all this bad shit and say that it's not helping me as a power source. And I'm going to take this good shit, and that's what the power source is what helps you focus more. And, focus more. So, full body. So it's basically saying that it's got to have a pulse. Like you have a flat area, then you have a pulse. You have one pump. You know, you also have pushing. You also have like a rep. You know, and when you do one flex like this, it has a let go like this. But it takes two people to even flex like this, because you have to perceive someone else. And it has to be a form of partner in order to visualize yourself. They would be open to you, you would be open to them. It'd be like it'd be like talking to yourself. But the other half that you can see, you know, it kind of spins out. It's like if there's a girl, there has to be the male side of it. Or if there's two people, then there has to be the two sides. There has to be a receiving in and a giving in. You know, it has to be fail and meal, hail. You know, at this point, you know, I think maybe it should just be all taken apart like that. And anyway, so the point of this is basically, you know, to collect EG and liters of blood that go to the dick and vaggie from flat to max. You know, so how much blood, you know, does it take to fill it up? And that should be counted. There should be something you could put on, you know, like a condom, you know, or like, you know, something that could measure, you know, flat and then full, you know, and then forced full, you know, which would be when you're really trying to do it, but it doesn't do it. That's when half of it So theoretically, thinking that way and making better looking forms of myself instead of worse looking, like if I look, my face right now and its mood looks like it's just getting cussed out by someone, and that to me is not really a climax if it has nothing to do with me looking better. I think that looking morally worse, you know, when it comes down to appearance and health. If I was really speaking about something else at this time, I just don't think that's right. That's the thing about Tantra, is that it takes that information and puts it together. And so yeah, I'll just go ahead and finish this part, and I'm gonna ruin, we have our shriveled and flat at max and our flexing when not. It's when, some like vagina has to have like a pressure coming out kind of like that. It kind of has to have kind of a like an assward in motion. That kind of makes the vagina, like after you look at your throat and you look at your lungs and all that, and you can see that little tiny little shriveled area there. If someone is shriveled and they're looking at their feet, and it's not going any further because there is a circle being perceived, and that it would be limp in that circle, is what everyone has to go through, and will have limp sex with each other regardless, every single person, and it will have to be some kind of way, whether it's plus and minus, minus and minus, plus and plus, or whatever the fuck it's going to be, but it has to have, a good force in there, and has to have motion and movement, has to have, that something continues and goes in a perpetual motion. A gesture goes in perpetual motion. It's just like, like it going in perpetual motion. It also says here, exhaustion or still temporary confidence. And these faces are really good. This to me looked like Jack Black if it was some other woman shopping at Walmart and he just never used it, that point of view, and just didn't direct it to do anything, so it's still there. Probably uncomfortably like, haha, yeah, I'm happy with my fake sex life, huh? It didn't do me any good, or something, still holding something really hard and it's just not giving, and then the exhaustion when someone's really exhausted, like, and they called it and they're like, well, that was good, and you're exhausted as possible, and you never want to fuck for the rest of your life. You never want to like work out, is what I mean, and never want to exercise for the rest of your life, is which I'm talking about, because there's a climax to working out, there's a climax to doing other things. You have to find out how to get almost to the climax and continue to build it instead of hit a climax and then stop. That's the point. It's having control over your life, instead of not having any control over life. And then we have flat volume skin without, and then we have forced volume half, not max, and then we have tantric volume sustained max. And that's just basically saying that you can kind of go in and out like this, like that, and you can go a little bit more, a little bit less, and it's gaining volume. It's like if you're, biking uphill like this, it's more comfortable, or if you're skiing down like this, it's more comfortable than going straight down it. And this shouldn't be, the fact that going straight down some shit, and then we have, cc's of blood pressure, and air pressure, I think would be useful. Blowing up, the same amount in volume to see how air would be compressed as kind of a side study. And then blood pressure, how many cc's of blood pressure, how much blood, how many liters does it take to fill it up and not, and getting rid of the flat part where, okay, we have shriveled flat and then half, where this is going to be hindered when you look at the throat and drink water at the same time, and when you breathe and look at the lungs, like with a camera, looking at it, breathing, and I mean everything, every single tube up in here, your nose, your nostrils, lungs, your heart, your ball sack, your, semen little thing needs a camera in it, Your ovary needs a camera in it. Your clit needs a camera in it. All of that needs to be seen at the same time. Now, every time I've seen Walmart that shit at the same time, you know what? That shit doesn't do shit. You know, it doesn't all be in sync. It doesn't be like you could just blow through a straw and then it could just go into something and be actually accumulated instead of blucky pee. You know, it doesn't work. You know, and that's it. But I really wish that there could be some science to it where it could actually be cultivated. Now, if there was simple things like this to use that could actually, you know, count it, and it's just doing exercise. I mean, all it is this and counting that. You know, real talk, there's an insert and then you let go for a minute and then you pull it out, you know, but I mean, you know what, it's got to take a shape in order to even go in. You can't have something just forced and it goes in. It doesn't work that way. It'll be limp and it won't work. You can't have something that doesn't have a full, you know, expression so it actually accrues something instead of just is doing it. You can't do it that way, you know. So, yeah. So tantric volume is basically just at a comfortable level without having it where half of it is hard and half is not, where someone gets off to it being limp. The rape thing. Men have it and women. You know, and it's basically women fake it and men flat it. You know, but when men flat it, it really is not a good feeling and it's really tiny and shrivelly feeling. And it will not have me in it. You know, it won't work. Won't be tantric. But if it was done, there would be no exhaustion there and there wouldn't be someone over here going, "Purr, purr," and someone behind them going, you know, and both these people too exhausted. You know, it's supposed to be where all the exhausted air that we've ever breathed and saw other people that we felt their pain, that was our breathing exhausting. We'd have to take that breathing exhausting and be able to measure the air cc's of that and see how we could push it into the cc's of breathing when we're doing that. Because breathing in cc's also has to do with it. You could do drinking. You could do everything with it, probably. But you have to be able to basically get the air and blood and see how this exhaustion could actually be put into something. And why can't I just say it? I mean, why, if I'm describing with my hands, why does that mean that there's syrup and there's cereal and babies moving these hands at the same time in other density areas? And that's all I have is coverage? I can't just put, you know, some kind of power source and be able to just cap it off so my gestures won't have I didn't do it and then there's shit on my hand? If it was someone else's gesture with that? I mean, there is, you know, 6 billion people. I mean, one person can't do this, you know, without having, you know, shit on their hands. And just that, you know, that there's just too much overstressing, you know. But every other person, I'm just saying, why can't it just be something you could measure? Like you know, you got your bicycle and now you have your little speedometer thing. It could read like some shit. You push a button and it tells you how fast you're going, how many miles, what time it is, got a little stopper on it. They need something like that for that. You know, and for breathing too. You know, like they need to have something smart enough. And I do have something for that, but basically what my goal is that, you know, censorship, children, kids, adults, and all that should all be individualized into, you know, pressure sectors where, you know, our furthest force that we have, our tantric force, you know, instead of just the forced, you know, the force volume, and just have it where, you know, there is no flat influence, where there's no effort involved, and it looks like it's still there, like in school, you know, and then make Tantra as a power source.